Hello, and welcome to Wild Vittles. This is the podcast where we're going to help each other become better wild game cooks and hopefully help you utilize the wild game you have in your freezer. And I bet it's the best wild game podcast that you've never heard of. I'm really excited about today. Let me just grab a couple things here. We're going to get started. We're going to get rolling on this. This is a live cooking session, so hopefully you're going to hear in the background actually the things that I'm doing. So this is one cut, one take, no kind of editing of the shots except for the intro and the outro. So I've got a skillet in front of me that's ripping hot. I just threw in, probably a tablespoon or two of olive oil. And so what we're going to cook today is one of my absolute favorites. It's a casserole. Today is actually, for me, the day that I'm recording this is the 23rd. I'll probably get it out on Christmas Eve on the 24th. It's a great casserole to put out for like big groups. It could be for just yourself. It makes great leftovers. It's a stick to your ribs kind of a winter type meal for me. Hell, I like to eat it all year round. But it's John Wayne casserole. I've gotten this off the internet. I'll put the recipe in the show notes. It's extremely simple. Let me get the onions going. So while I'm talking, we can get this thing going. So you can hear what I'm putting in right now is a chopped up onion. I think the instructions say finely chopped, and there's nothing fine about the way that I've chopped this. This is a pretty rough chop on my basis, but it will all be good. So this is a John Wayne casserole. It's kind of a Mexican cowboy casserole, kind of a taco casserole. And I love this because it utilizes game meat, wild game meat. It utilizes my deer burger. You can use any kind of wild game burger. It needs to be lean. And I think that's a neat, desirable trait because wild game meat is lean, and we have to add in fat. And this is one of the reasons that I like to have some of my burger with no fat in it. So yay me for being a little lazy and not always incorporating fat. But I think that grinding it without the fat gives you options. And so I'll defend my position of actually not putting fat in, as it gives me more optionality because I can add in fat later, or I can grind up a roast and put fat in it if I have let's say a recipe that needs it. Let's say you're doing a meatloaf or a meatball or burgers like we did in my previous episode. You need fat in those. But taco meat, and this is similar to kind of taco meat, this is a casserole, you don't need fat in there. So all I got to do in this is one white onion. Now let me run through the ingredients real quick so that everybody is aware. So it's 1 pound of ground lean meat. Could be anything. You can make it out of burger if you want to, but I'm using whitetail. Also a can of ranch style beans, my dad's favorite. Let's see what else here. A bag of tortilla chips, one 12-ounce bag. A can of Ro-tel, and I'm using hot diced tomatoes with habaneros. I like hot stuff. Also a small onion. This is a medium-sized onion. Got to keep this stirring. I've got this pan pretty hot. Don't want these onions to burn. 2 cups of shredded cheddar cheese. Truthfully, sometimes I use 4 cups. I like it pretty cheesy, but in this case it says 2 cups. 1 package of taco seasoning. 1 can of cream of mushroom soup, good old Campbell's. Half a cup of water. I don't actually use that. And then for toppings, sour cream or salsa for serving. And also, we're going to be putting this in the oven. So I'll have to actually get that started in just a second to preheat to 325. So what I'm going to do here is these onions are just about good enough. They're sweating. They're becoming translucent. My pan was a little too hot, and some of them are a little browned. But let me get my burger out. And Actually, this burger, I had to throw it. This is my hot tip. I think I mentioned last time. I got this out like in a hurry. So I threw it in a Ziploc, the ground burger, deer burger, wrapped it up airtight in the Ziploc, and then put it in a Tupperware, filled that Tupperware with cold water, and threw it in the fridge, and it thaws quick, extremely quick. Oh, I should have put this already out. But just a pound, and when you're mixing up your burger and you're bagging it, you really ought to be, and that happens too sometimes, you really ought to think about having different sizes because sometimes you need 2 pounds, sometimes you need 1.5 pounds, sometimes you need a pound. And this gives you lots of optionality. So pardon me, I'm going to pick this up. All right. So we're getting the burger in here. I'm breaking this up to get it browned. And you might look at that and go, wow, that's not very much to go in your casserole. It'll spread out and break out. And once you get it browned, and we're going to mix in the other ingredients, which are going to be those beans, the Ro-tel, the soup, it'll all come together. And I'm telling you, this is going to be a go-to meal. And I have it in my rotation. I'm going to dish over here to the side and wash my hands now. So bear with me as I'm at the sink, being hygienic. We're going to get this, I'm going to turn this up slightly so we can, I need to expedite the browning of this meat, so I'm going to turn this up to what I would say a almost high heat, not high, but medium high. On my scale of 1 to 10, I've turned it up to a 7. Normally I run on a 6 because I'm going to try to put this together a little bit faster. And I'm hungry. This is my dinner tonight. Had to wait until my wife was out for the evening so I could have an uninterrupted time of quiet to do this live cooking podcast. I think I like live cooking better than doing video and voiceover because it's hard for me to kind of get into the moment, really experience it like I do when I'm cooking. Because when I'm cooking, it just comes natural to kind of talk. It sounds like, I feel like I have somebody sitting across the bar from me, meaning the kitchen table here, where I'm cooking the kitchen counter, and explaining it to them. So we've put in the onion that I chopped up, ahead of time. I've got olive oil in the pan to facilitate the cooking. I've put the ground burger in. This is a very lean pound of whitetail meat. And I'm now kind of mixing that in with the onions and getting that all browned. I'm going to get my oven to begin to preheat 325 degrees. Because hopefully by the time I get ready, it's going to have a little beep beep, and we're going to be ready to throw that in. And we'll cook that in there for 325 degrees. I think it says 20 to 30 minutes. That, and where I come from, that means 25 minutes. I have to take off my headset for a second to plug in. 325 degrees. Let's go bake. 3, 2, 5. No, bake. Upper off. Bake. 3, 2, 5. Start. All right. And trying to get my paraphernalia back on here, get my headset on. And we're good. While this is browning, let's talk a little bit about some of the other things that we're going to do. So the casserole dish that I'm going to put this in, because right now I'm browning this meat in a cast iron. I think it's a 12-inch cast iron. You could do it in a smaller one, but I don't like to crowd it. We're going to put this in a casserole dish. I'm using a Pyrex 9x13. I'm looking at it to double check if I'm a liar. Yeah, 9x13 by 2. And we're going to need to grease that so that stuff doesn't stick. I've actually never tried it without it, but I don't want to find out, oh God, that was terrible. Don't ever do that again. So let me grab my spray here, which is a little non-stick cooking spray. It's actually olive oil. I'm going to spray that in there. And I'm going to go ahead and start prepping my casserole dish to have some productive time because, you know, when you're browning meat, not much is happening. You're just waiting for it to cook, right? Another reason I really like this dish is it's pretty fast. It's not as fast as chili, which I will cook in a future episode, because I can do chili like in 30 or 45 minutes flat, although I like it to simmer for a good 30 minutes. This, probably with the cook time in the oven, is probably an hour, but it's just damn good. So this is coming together pretty fast, the browning. Let me get the chips. And what I'm going to do, I have a bag of tortilla chips. Doesn't matter what kind. It actually doesn't even matter if they're a little bit stale, because when you're cooking them, they're not going to be the same. So if you had some chips that are, you know, what I call shrapnel at the bottom of the bag, or some that are almost out of date or maybe slightly out of date, use them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some handfuls of this. I've already sprayed into my pan some nonstick spray, and I'm going to crush up some chips, just kind of like big chunks, and make a bottom layer. So think about a foundation. So I'm reaching in there. These are bite-sized rounds, but they can be any kind, just as long as they're tortilla chips. Putting that in, and I'm going to cover the entire bottom of that 9x13 pan. And when we get our meat mixture browned here, we're going to mix together the other ingredients. That's going to be a layer in here. So it's kind of like a bean dip. But really it's like it's a taco casserole is what I like to call it. I don't know why it's called John Wayne, but I really enjoyed John Wayne. Still do enjoy John Wayne as a movie star. He's my father-in-law's favorite cowboy movie star. But who doesn't like John Wayne? I don't know. Maybe millennials? I don't know. Maybe. You know, I'm gonna, you know, if you're hearing this podcast and you've never seen me on Instagram, I'd encourage you to come look me up. I am at Wild Vittles Podcast on Instagram. And if you cook something cool, tag me in it. I will post you up to share your recipe with the world. I've had a couple do that right now. A friend of mine out in California, he goes by, his show name is Bo Disciples. His gentleman's name is James Visser. He actually hit me up. He liked one of my recipes that I had posted. I actually haven't done a podcast on it yet. It's cowboy goulash. He actually cooked it the other day. I posted him up. And then another friend, Jesse from Flower Mound over in Texas, he had done some really awesome, tenderloin, as well as some wood duck. Just some really simple recipes. So I enjoy posting up other folks' stuff. So be sure to let me know if you've got something that you want shared in the community. All right, this browning is coming along very well. I have now a casserole dish that is filled with the bottom layer of chips. Our browning is not quite done. I still see some pink in here. And you know, this is a really approachable dish as well. I would say anybody that likes cheese and taco meat should like this casserole. So I would say it's family friendly. I take leftovers as well to work, freeze as well. I have frozen some of this and put it in vacuum seal bags and taken it camping. You know, what I mean by that is if you vacuum seal any kind of a cooked food and you freeze it solid, you take it out with you camping, all you got to do is throw it in a pot of boiling water to reheat it. The boiling water will not melt the bag because it's kind of a high temp plastic. It'll just heat your food, and it'll sit there at 200 degrees, kind of like a sous vide. And as soon as you're ready to eat, you just open the bag and pour it into a plate or a bowl, and you have some home-cooked food. This is almost browned. I'm going to call this good in just a second, and we're going to be well on our way. And 1 pound of ground, that's a small step in you fully utilizing your deer. I think I've mentioned before, most people, if you get at least one whitetail deer, you probably have 50 pounds of meat in your freezer. You need to be consuming a minimum of an average of pound a week to be able to, when you arrive at your deer season next year, just say, heck, I'm out, which is a good feeling for a hunter. I don't want any wild game waste on my part, and I have in my freezer currently 2 whitetails and an elk, and the elk is a small cow, so it's kind of the size of a really big whitetail buck probably. It was a real young cow. Some ducks, some fish. I think that's about it. So I've got to be doing more like 3 pounds a week on average. But I actually kind of keep up with that and have a pretty good track record because I like to cook. All right, this meat is browned, and now we're going to add our seasoning in. I'm going to put taco seasoning, but I'm going to grab a can opener real quick. Would have been great if I had that in advance. So, 1 packet of taco seasoning. And, this is just the generic brand from my HEB. How many's in? What is this? This is a 1.25 ounce. But I assume that a taco seasoning packet is a universal unit of measure, I think. And you could probably make this yourself, if you didn't want to use what is from the store. It smells like it's got cumin in it. It's probably got chili powder. But, what I love about this recipe is that it's just so convenient. And yeah, you throw a few cans of this and the seasoned packaging of that in there, and bada boom, bada bing, you have, a wonderful dish, even if it is a casserole. But, casseroles kind of seem kind of stodgy. That's what, your mom's mom, would that be your grandma, or your buddy's mom, brings to something. But it can be what hunters do to bring to a gathering. It could be what you're going to be doing for maybe a holiday gathering, potluck, all those kinds of things. All right, I mixed in the taco seasoning. I'm going to put in this cream of chicken soup. This is condensed soup. It's going to wobble out of here like a yellow version of that cranberry sauce, that kind of jiggles. I'm going to get out a can of Ro-tel, and again, I'm doing hot habanero. They have regular, they have mild. Saw one that was like Hatch chilies. I need to try that. No need to drain because I want the juice in this because my meat is lean. And then ranch style beans. I assume ranch style beans can be found all over the United States, but they are a southern thing. Kind of like vittles. If you're wondering what the hell are vittles? Well, vittles is a cowboy slang word for food. And so often my wife and I will say, well, what kind of vittles are you going to whip up tonight? Or if you ever saw Beverly Hillbillies, I often heard Granny, who's the matriarch with the Beverly Hillbillies, say that she was cooking some vittles. So no, I did not make that word up. Now we're going to mix the ingredients in here. So I have added a can of cream chicken soup, a can of ranch style beans, a can of Ro-tel, and a packet of taco seasoning into my ground whitetail that I had already mixed in 1 chopped onion. And at first you're going to look at this when you're mixing it up and you're like, Chris, I know you said this is going to come together, but it does not look like it's going to come together. Trust me, it will come together. Keep mixing it until you have one uniform color across it. And it's going to be a little oranger than like refried beans. You know, you're going to make this, it's think meaty bean dip is what this is going to look like. Once you get soup mixed in, everything will congeal, come together, get these Ro-tel tomatoes. You know, sometimes I wonder if the Ro-tel people are pulling the wool over my eyes, because when I pour that can out, all I see is tomatoes. They swear to me there's some chilies in there. I taste the heat, but I feel like they're a little stingy on the chilies. I guess it's because they're so hot. Your ratio, it must be like 10% chilies, something like that. So I'm mixing this up almost vigorously to make sure that I get a good distribution. We are super close. You heard my oven go off a minute ago at preheat 325. And we're so close. I can't see my timer to know how long I've already gone, but it doesn't feel like a long time. All right, I think I've about got this to a point that I'm happy with it. I'm gonna let that simmer just a bit. I'm gonna open up my cheese to get that prepped. You know, sometimes I'll shred my own cheese, like a block of cheese, and I'll shred it myself. But this one, I don't think it really matters. There's an enchilada recipe that I do want a block of cheese, you know, shredded. I think it does matter on that one. This one, I've gone from doing a finely shred to a thick shred on the prepared shredded cheese, and I've been happier with that. So I'd recommend that. All right, I think that I'm happy with this. I'm going to turn my burner off, and I'm going to position. Now I've got my casserole dish, my 9x13 casserole dish that I sprayed in some non-stick spray. I've spread across the bottom the, when I say crushed chips, more like broken chips. You can still see large, I'd say, how big are those chips? You know, 1/2 to 1 inch size pieces. Pretty big, pretty crumbly. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pour in my mix that I've got in the skillet. So my meat, bean, soup, and onion mix into the skillet. Sometimes I like to kind of throw a couple dabs like in the corners of the casserole dish. And why do I do that? Because when I pour it in, sometimes it pushes the chips away, and you'll have a section in the middle that doesn't have like chips underneath it, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of throwing some in to distribute the weight, if you will, across the casserole dish so that the chips don't move. But this is a very inefficient method for me to do it, you know, because my scoop is just really a kind of a stirred stick. All right, I'm going to hoist this all in, and hopefully I don't drop my skillet. And I kind of go down the middle because it'll fill out. And be sure and get every last bit out of your skillet that you can, because this is just pure goodness. All right, that is good. I'm going to now take it's kind of like a spatula, and spread out my meat mixture that is the filling of this casserole, so that now you have on the bottom that chip foundation. I've poured in this bean meat soup mixture that's all congealed together, and then we're going to take the Mexican cheese. I'm supposed to take 1/2 or 3/4 of this, and sometimes I get a little crazy with it and I'll use more, but I do kind of a layer over the meat, and then we're going to put chips on top of that. So if you're so inclined and you're like, Chris, I like a lot of cheese, and I think tonight I want a lot of cheese, so I'm going to use the whole damn bag. In fact, that didn't get me quite everything, so I'm going to open up the second bag. I used one bag and it got me about 2/3 of the way there. And I'm going to take this other bag, which, oh man, I opened it a little too high. And it did not, there we go, didn't open far enough down when you peel from the side. And I'm going to go ahead and finish this off where I've got a really healthy, and I mean healthy, layer of cheese on top of this meat mixture of shredded cheese. I don't think I said what kind this is. This is Mexican style blend from HEB, and it's a mix of Monterey Jack, cheddar, acetero, quesadilla cheese blend. And I've saved, I don't know, maybe a cup on top, because next we're going to put a layer of chips on top of that. And I rough crush these, and we're going to make a crust on top. So I just get a handful of chips and squeeze, and then put those on top. Sometimes I get fancy, and I'll, like, if I feel like a real artisan, I'll just like arrange chips on top as one layer. But actually, I think crushing them has given me a better result. It's a little hard to cut through if you have whole chips on top. I was snacking on the chips earlier, and I may run out of chips. And I have another bag in the cupboard in the pantry, but they're not the same shape of chips, so it may look a little silly. Let's see. I think I'm gonna make it. I think it's gonna fit. So about 2/3 of the way done here, and we're gonna have the last of these chips on top. I mean, this is something you could even have the kids do. I know they would enjoy crushing the chips, right, and putting those in. Now that I've got all of the top covered with some chips, I'm going to take what's left of the shredded cheese, and I'm going to put that on. So yeah, I did double the amount of cheese the recipe called for, because it called for 2 cups. I put in 4. So what I'm doing now is kind of sprinkling lightly over the top. You know, not as heavy as I did underneath, but enough that you've got kind of a smattering of cheese. And that's done. So what we're going to do, going to refer to my notes here, is I'm going to cover it with foil and bake it for 25 minutes, probably 20, and the last 5 I'll uncover so that you get melty on top. So I'm gonna unhook from my headphones. I'm gonna grab the foil. You'll hear the foil wrapping, and I will then put it into the oven. We'll wait 25 minutes, and you're not gonna see it, but I'm gonna have it uncovered with foil for the last 5, and we'll come back and you'll get to see the finished product. Bada boom, bada bing. Sounds good. All right. Welcome back. We've been waiting about 25 minutes. At 20 minutes, I pulled the foil off, and we are at time to pull our casserole out. Let's see if my headphones will reach all the way to the oven. Smells toasty, bubbly. We're looking really good. Let me shut the oven. And so what we have here, and I'm holding it up for the video folks, but for the audio folks, I don't think you can hear bubbling. But what we have is a casserole dish that smells like mom's home cooking right now. And sitting at 325, there's nothing in there that was actually raw that needed to cook. It's just really getting it heated all the way through, getting everything to come together in this kind of beautiful symphony of awesomeness of Tex-Mex flavors. And so we've got the cheese melted, the chips are kind of toasted on top, the cheese underneath the chips is kind of mixed in now with that meat bean soup taco seasoning mixture, and you've got that bottom crust kind of like a wonderful Tex-Mex pie, all pulled together, and it smells wonderful. Now, normally I would let this sit for 5-10 minutes before I dig into it, but I'm going to cut a piece out right now and throw it into a bowl. Bear with me. I use a spatula when I do this. I'm cutting a piece about a spatula width, coincidentally, out. Let's scoop that out of there. Oh, it's steaming and looks wonderful. And then my favorite taco hot sauce of choice is Tapatio. As you can see there, I'm going to shake that up and put a healthy dose of Tapatio on top. And try, the hot sauce makes me cough, and try a bite. It's hot. That's good stuff. So, what we learned today? A taco casserole. Whew, that's hot with the habanero Ro-tel. I like it. A taco casserole called John Wayne casserole. Very simple ingredients. Can be made in under an hour. Didn't dirty very many dishes. I just one pan, one casserole dish, a few utensils, bada boom, bada bing. That's all taken care of. So this is in my top 5 of my favorite, and I hope that you'll enjoy it too. I'm going to put the recipe in the show notes. It's not my recipe. I found it on the internet on some random recipe page when I think I just Googled John Wayne, and there was a casserole. You can, as I've done, change things in it. Very simple. You can make your own taco seasoning if you want to. You could throw toppings on this like jalapenos. You can spice it up more. I've been thinking about putting some chipotles in it to kind of give it more pizzazz or a little smoke. But the options are limitless. So that concludes today's episode. It's a little bit longer format. Hopefully you like this live in the kitchen type format where I'm actually cooking and you can kind of hear things going on instead of me just monotone drawing on. And as soon as I get my internet wavelengths better lined out, I'm hoping to do some interviews as soon as I figure that out too, because I've got some folks. I had a volunteer already, Jeff Benda, who is a wonderful, wonderful wild game cook from up in the Dakotas. I met him at a BHA rendezvous last year, actually this spring. I want to have him on as soon as we can. I want to talk to some of the wild game chefs that have cookbooks that I have. I'm hoping they'll come on as well, and I have some home cooks that I want to talk to that are pretty damn good cooks. So all coming up. I hope everybody has happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And please, please, please give me some feedback if you can on the YouTube. Like and subscribe if you can on the podcast. Give me a 5-star review. If you don't think I deserve a 5-star review, put it in there and tell me why, because I want to improve. And I'm just doing this for fun and love of the game, but I want to get better, and I need you to tell me. So if you want to communicate more directly to me, I'm at the Wild Vittles Podcast on Instagram, and it's all out there, and I'm all ears. So until next time, try something new, and let's all do this for the love of the game, the love of the wild game. I appreciate you, and good luck and good night.